Hello! Today we're going to talk about a time when a new invention completely changed the world. You see, that's exactly what happened with the printing press. We're going to explore how this amazing technology didn't just change how people read books, but also started a huge revolution in religion, which was one of the most powerful forces of that time. So, let's begin. Now, just imagine, before the printing press, books were like treasures. They were copied by hand, a very slow and difficult process. This made them so rare and so expensive that only very, very wealthy people could afford to own one. For everybody else, knowledge, and especially religious knowledge, was something you heard from priests, not something you could read yourself. But then, everything changed. The printing press suddenly made books cheap and easy to get, and for the very first time, ideas could spread to anyone who knew how to read.
And this leads us to the main question for our topic today. What exactly happens when sacred books and religious ideas, which were once controlled by only a few people, are suddenly available for everyone to read and to understand for themselves? This is a very important question because the answer helps us understand the massive changes that took place all over Europe. So, as more and more people got books, a new kind of world started to form. It was a world where people didn't just listen to others, they started reading for themselves. Let's take a closer look at this incredible shift from a listening culture to a reading culture.
You see, the printing press was a real game changer. It brought down the cost of making books by a huge amount. What used to take many months of hard work could now be done in just a short time. And just like that, books were everywhere, and people were very eager to read them. And here is the machine that started it all, the Gutenberg press. This amazing invention could print 250 pages in just 1 hour. Now think about it. A person writing by hand would be lucky to finish a few pages in a whole day. This machine was truly the engine that powered the print revolution. This new access to books created a very deep change in the culture. Before print, most ordinary people were part of what we call a hearing public. They would experience religious texts by listening to a priest read them out loud. But with cheap printed books, a reading public started to grow. People can now buy their own books and read them quietly, forming their own ideas. This was a completely new way of thinking. And when people began reading and thinking for themselves, they also started to ask questions. And one of the biggest things they questioned was the authority of the church. This created the situation for one of the most important events in European history, the Protestant Reformation. In the year 1517, a monk named Martin Luther did something very courageous. He wrote down a list of 95 points criticizing some of the practices of the powerful Catholic Church, and he posted a printed copy on a church door for everyone to read. It was a direct challenge to the biggest authority in Europe, and it was the printing press that made this possible. So, what was this Protestant Reformation? Well, it was a movement that began with a demand for changes inside the Catholic Church, but it eventually led to a major division, splitting Christianity into different groups. This division is something that still exists today. Martin Luther himself knew just how powerful this new technology was. He once said, "Printing is the ultimate gift of God and the greatest one." He understood that the printing press was the perfect tool to spread his ideas about reform to people he could never have reached otherwise. With the printing press on his side, Luther's ideas spread incredibly fast, just like a wildfire. This was not just about religion anymore. It was the beginning of what we call mass communication. The speed and scale of it was something the world had never seen before. 5,000. 5,000. That is the number of copies of Luther's translation of the New Testament that were sold in only a few weeks. The demand was so high that they had to print a second edition within 3 months. This kind of reach was simply unimaginable before the printing press. Workshops like this one were like the factories of the Reformation. Can you imagine the busy sounds, the smell of the ink and paper? Printers were working day and night, producing thousands of pamphlets and posters with Luther's writings and spreading his message all across Europe. To understand how big a change this was, just think about the difference. Before print, an idea could only travel as fast as a person could walk or ride, spreading slowly from one person to another. But with printed pamphlets, an idea could reach thousands of people across the entire continent in a matter of weeks. But, of course, not everyone was happy about this new technology. For the people in power, the kings and the religious leaders, the printing press seemed like a very dangerous thing. Let's look at how they reacted. The authorities were very, very afraid. They felt that print was a force they could not control. They worried, what if people start reading rebellious ideas? What if they start to question everything we have told them? They feared that this new technology would lead to complete chaos and destroy the order of society. This picture here, the macabre dance, shows that fear very clearly. If you look closely, you can see skeletons, which are symbols of death, taking over the printing press. This is how the authorities saw it, not as a tool for knowledge, but as a destructive machine that could bring an end to their world. Now, the church had a special word for these dangerous new ideas: heresy. And being a heretic was not just about having a different opinion. It was considered a very serious crime. If you were found guilty of heresy, the punishment could be very severe, even death. So, how did the church fight against this flood of new ideas coming from the printing press? Well, they did not just sit quietly. They fought back with all their power. The church's response had three main parts. First, the Inquisition, which was a system of church courts that had the power to find and punish heretics. Second, they used censorship, putting strict controls on printers and booksellers. And third, they created an index of prohibited books, which was basically a list of books that they declared were too dangerous for people to read. So as we can see, the impact of the printing press was quite complex. On the one hand, it opened up a new world of debate and helped new ideas for reform to spread. But on the other hand, this same technology also created deep divisions in society and led to serious, often violent conflicts over religion. It was a force for both change and for conflict. But the story of the printing press and religion was only the beginning. This incredible technology would later go on to challenge everything, from science and our understanding of the universe to the way we think about governments and politics. But that is a story for another lesson. Thank you for joining me.